There are two tables in this story. I grew up believing only one of them existed. The first table is the one I had just been uninvited from. My adoptive parents are sitting at it, along with 11 members of a family that had spent 22 years learning how to arrange itself for photographs. My adoptive mother has just said, in a restaurant, on my birthday, in front of all of them, that they were done. Those were the words she used. Done. Past tense. It's declarative. The kind of sentence that cannot be walked back because it was never meant to be. The second table is 7 feet away, partially obscured by a partition. The 4 people sitting at it do not know my name yet. They do not know why I chose this restaurant. This night, this particular reservation time. There is a sealed envelope in my coat pocket that I have not opened in front of anyone. My adoptive parents told everyone for 22 years that they had chosen me. Tonight they unchose me in public, on a birthday, with witnesses. What they did not know was that I had also made a choice, 4 months earlier, quietly without announcement. But to understand why both families were in that room, you have to understand what I had spent the previous 4 months, quietly putting together and why I had chosen that night to let it arrive. My adoptive parents were the kind of people who framed their generosity publicly and often. They had adopted me at 11 months old, and for years that fact was offered at dinner parties. The way other people offered credentials, as evidence of character, of capacity, of a particular kind of love that required an audience to feel complete. The house smelled like fresh paint every spring. My adoptive mother repainted the hallway every April without fail. And every 3 years, she scheduled a family portrait to be taken in that hallway by the same photographer, in coordinated colors she selected in February. I am in every portrait. In the first one, taken when I was 4, I am at the center. By the third portrait, I am at the left edge, 1 step removed from the frame's natural weight. By the 5th, I am standing slightly behind my adoptive father's shoulder, present but peripheral, the way furniture is present in a room that has been rearranged around something else. The something else was my brother. He was born 3 years after my adoption, biological, unplanned according to the story my parents told, and from that point forward the family had a different center of gravity. Nobody said this. Nobody needed to. I understood it the way children understand things, that adults believe they have successfully, concealed completely, and in silence. I learned early that belonging required performance. I performed consistently. I was calm, competent, unremarkable in the ways that caused problems, and remarkable in the ways that reflected well. I did not know I was looking for something until I was 17 and found a document in a filing cabinet that told me what I was looking for had a name, an address, and a date of birth 3 days before mine. I was looking for my passport. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, and I had been asked to find it for a school trip form that was due the following morning. The filing cabinet was in my adoptive father's study, unlocked, organized in the particular way of a man who trusted that no one would look closely. The passport was in the 3rd drawer. The birth certificate was behind it. It was folded into thirds. The paper slightly thickened at the creases from years of sitting that way. My name was on it. My first name, different last name, a hospital I did not recognize, and a mother's name that was not my adoptive mother's name. I stood in that study for 4 minutes before I refolded it exactly as I had found it. I did not take it that afternoon. I went back 2 days later and took it then, replacing it with a blank sheet of paper folded to the same dimensions. No one ever mentioned it. I said nothing for 5 years. What I did instead was look. A DNA registry at 19. A social worker intermediary at 20. A letter written over 11 drafts sent at 21. The birth certificate stayed folded in the same thirds, kept in a book no one borrowed. It was the first document that told me who I was before anyone else had decided. The birth family answered my letter in 11 days. The woman who wrote back used a word in the second paragraph that my adoptive mother had never once used. About me, she called me hers. The social worker intermediary forwarded the estate attorney's letter on a Wednesday morning in March. I was 21 years and 9 months old. My 21st birthday had passed 7 months earlier without incident. A dinner my adoptive parents organized. A card, a weekend. Nothing else. Nothing mentioned. The letter was 3 pages. It had been written by the attorney who had administered my birth grandmother's estate, and it had been sitting in a file marked with my name for 7 months, waiting for someone to ask the right question. The intermediary had asked it on my behalf without knowing what the answer would be. My birth grandmother had established a trust in my name at the time of the adoption, $140,000, structured to be held by the adoptive parents as custodial trustees and transferred to me in full on my 21st birthday. The trust instrument named me specifically, my birth name, with a notation acknowledging the adoption. The transfer date was documented. The custodial trustees were documented. Their signatures were on the original instrument. My 21st birthday had come and gone. Nothing had been transferred. Nothing had been mentioned. I was now 21 years and 9 months old. When the estate attorney's letter arrived, I read it 4 times. The 4th time I understood that my 21st birthday had not been forgotten. It had been calculated. I did not call them. I made an appointment with a family law attorney instead, and I brought every document I had accumulated in 5 years of quiet searching. The family law attorney reviewed the trust instrument, the estate filing, and the intermediary's forwarded correspondence across 2 meetings. She was precise and unhurried, the kind of attorney who does not editorialize. At the end of the 2nd meeting, she told me 3 things. The trust was valid. It had been funded and properly executed at the time of the adoption. The $140,000 was real, documented, and had been received by the custodial trustees, my adoptive parents, at the time of my birth. Grandmother's estate settlement. The custodial trustees had a fiduciary obligation to transfer the trust assets to the named beneficiary on the specified date. That date was my 21st birthday. The transfer had not occurred. 9 months of inaction, following a documented transfer obligation, constituted a breach of the trust instrument. Standard procedure before filing was a formal demand letter. The attorney would prepare it. I asked her to hold it for 30 days. She looked at me for a moment and then wrote something on her notepad. She did not ask why I needed 30 days. I think she understood that some things need a witness before they can be properly received. My adoptive parents were planning my 22nd birthday dinner. They had booked the restaurant. They had invited the extended family. They were doing what they had always done, arranging the table, selecting the positions, managing the frame. I called the birth family that evening. I told them I had something to tell them and that I would like to tell them in person. I suggested a date. They said yes before I finished the sentence. 3 weeks before my birthday, I met my birth family for the first time. Not over a phone call, not through a lawyer's summary, in person. A corner booth at a quiet restaurant. Afternoon light coming through frosted glass. Menus neither of us looked at for very long. My birth mother has my hands. I noticed that before I noticed anything else. She apologized within the first 4 minutes. For the decision, for the years, for things that were not, by any honest accounting, her fault. I did not know how to tell her that yet, so I just listened. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about a system that had given her no real choice. Not the version my adoptive parents had described, where a young woman made a loving, difficult decision. A different version, one where the options were narrow and the paperwork moved faster than she did. Halfway through, she reached into her bag and placed an envelope on the table. Inside was my grandmother's original letter of intent, handwritten, dated 22 years ago. She had kept it without ever knowing if it had arrived. I read it once. Then I folded it back into its original creases and handed it back to her. Then I told her what I had learned about what her mother had left for me, and what had happened to it. My adoptive parents chose the venue, a private dining room at a restaurant they liked. Warm lighting, linen napkins, the kind of place that signals occasion. I arrived on time. I had made one additional arrangement they did not know about. My birth family was seated 2 tables away in the adjacent section. Not hidden, not announced, simply present, visible through the open partition if anyone thought to look. No one looked, not yet. The dinner moved the way these dinners move. Toasts were made. Plates were cleared. My adoptive mother touched my arm twice and called me by a nickname I had been hearing since I was 4 years old. At 8:31 p.m., I reached into my jacket and placed a document on the table. I did not hand it to anyone. I read one paragraph aloud. The table went quiet in the particular way that a table goes quiet when something irreversible has just entered the room. Not loud, not dramatic. The acoustics of a half-full restaurant absorbing something. It was not built to hold. My adoptive mother saw the letterhead first. Her expression changed before she finished reading the firm's name. My adoptive father looked at the letterhead. Then he looked at me. He had the expression of a man who had just understood that a clock he did not know existed had already run out. They said I was no longer their child. They said it in a restaurant, on my birthday, in front of 11 people. The demand letter was formally served 3 days after the birthday. My attorney had already begun pulling probate records. My birth grandmother's estate had closed 2 years after the adoption was finalized. The filing confirmed it. $140,000 transferred to custodial trustees, documented, dated, and entered into the public record by people who assumed it would never be questioned. It had simply never been questioned. Until now. The response came 10 days later. I read it on a Tuesday morning at my kitchen table. Coffee I had not touched. The particular quiet of a weekday, morning when the rest of the world is already moving and you are sitting very still. The letter was 4 paragraphs. Their attorney did not deny the trust existed. He did not deny the transfer. He stated that the funds had been applied toward my care and upbringing over the course of my childhood. No itemized accounting was provided. I thought about the bedroom I had shared until I was 9. The school that lost its funding for my 2nd year. The college fund that was never mentioned until I asked, and then mentioned only once. There was a family portrait in the hallway of their house. I had not seen it since the birthday dinner. I could still place exactly where I was standing in it, slightly left of center, slightly toward the edge. I sent the response to my attorney the same afternoon with one note attached: proceed. My attorney filed the civil claim on a Friday. Breach of fiduciary duty. Custodial trustees. The claim cited the trust instrument, the estate filing, the absence of any accounting, and the 3-month window between my 21st birthday and the moment anyone had thought to mention that a clock existed at all. A separate complaint was filed the same week with the State Adoption Oversight Board. Undisclosed trust assets held by adoptive custodians, never reported, never transferred. The birth family was informed. They were not involved. The court established a mediation window of 45 days. I said nothing publicly. I did not post. I did not respond to the extended family members who reached out through 3 different platforms in the first 2 weeks. I was, by every visible measure, simply absent. The adoptive parents told relatives I had gone through something difficult. The legal filing described them as trustees in breach of a fiduciary obligation spanning 2 decades. Both descriptions existed at the same time. Only one of them was entered into the public record. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday. I spent the 44 days before it the same way. I had spent the previous 5 years paying attention and writing things down. The mediation room was small and deliberately neutral. A table, 6 chairs, a window that faced a parking structure, the kind of room designed to make everything feel procedural. Both attorneys were present. The mediator outlined the custodial trustee obligation in 11 minutes. No one interrupted. The first offer came from their side, $60,000. My attorney did not look at me. He did not need to. He declined. The counter was read aloud. Sir, the original trust value, plus $31,000 in accrued interest, calculated at the rate specified in the original trust instrument over the years it had gone untransferred. $171,000. My adoptive mother looked at her attorney. Not at me, at her attorney, with the expression of someone searching a face for an exit that isn't there. My adoptive father straightened the papers in front of him. They did not need straightening. He straightened them anyway. 17 seconds of silence. I counted them. The $60,000 offer had already told me everything. You do not offer a specific number unless you know the number you are avoiding. They had always known. I thought briefly of the portrait in the hallway, the careful arrangement of it, the way we had all stood where we were placed and held, the expressions we were asked to hold, a family managed for an audience that was never in the room. If you have ever been someone's child on paper and no one else's in practice, you already know what those 17 seconds felt like. They did not accept that day. They accepted 9 days later by email. At 11:23 in the morning, their attorney's message was 4 sentences. None of them included an apology. The settlement transferred in full within 30 days. The Adoption Oversight Board opened a review the following week. I was not required to participate. I did not. 2 of my adoptive family's aunts called within the same fortnight. The first apologized. The second explained at length why the adoptive parents had really had no choice. I listened to both calls completely. I responded to neither. The birth family marked the settlement on a Thursday evening. A kitchen table, not a restaurant. Food that someone had cooked rather than ordered. No toast, no fanfare, no photographs taken for anyone else's benefit. My birth mother brought the grandmother's letter. She had taken it from the envelope and placed it inside a simple frame. I held it for a moment before I set it down. The adoptive parents had spent 22 years assuming I would need them, financially, structurally, in every way that made dependency look like love. The settlement had confirmed in the clearest possible terms the opposite. I did not put the framed letter in a hallway. I put it on my desk, where I could see it while I worked. It faces the door. I like knowing it is the first thing anyone sees when they walk in. 8 months have passed. I am building something with my birth family. Slowly, without performance, without the managed warmth I had learned to recognize as a substitute for the real thing. It does not feel like a reunion. It feels like an introduction. Honest, unhurried, still becoming itself. The $171,000 is settled. The Adoption Oversight Board's review continues without my involvement. My adoptive parents and I do not speak. I have stopped describing that as loss. It is more accurate to call it clarity. The relationship was always an image maintained for an audience. The audience has gone home. The image has been retired. What remains is simply the truth of what it was. The grandmother's letter sits on my desk. It faces the door. It is the first thing anyone sees when they walk in. She never met me. She wrote the letter anyway. She funded the trust anyway. She framed it not as a rescue, but as a beginning. She wrote that she did not know who I would become. She wrote that she hoped I would know without question that I had been wanted. I know now. It only took 22 years and 1 sealed envelope to get there.